Hello everyone, this is your friend Uzumkai Universe 2.0 and we are back in new fanfic. What if a Naruto fan was reborn as Sakura and changed everything part 2? After an informative boat ride and a quiet farewell to our farrier, our team carried on with the mission. The moment I stepped onto the land of waves, I felt my heart soar in anticipation. Not only was I about to embark on a dangerous and positively thrilling adventure, but I was going to witness firsthand an entirely epic battle between two famous assassins. How could anyone not be absolutely gleeful? My lips twitched as I fought to hide back my excited giggles. I shifted the weight of my backpack so it was no longer entirely on one shoulder while my team and our client continued our walk to Tazuna's home. Naruto was on high alert, jumping at every side, with his eyes and head turning in all sorts of directions. I wonder why Kakashi doesn't just assassinate Gato. He's more than capable of it, and if he kills him, then no one would come after Tazuna. He doesn't know the security Gato has. If he needlessly endangers himself, he risks being unable to protect us from threats he knows are coming. He's an elite shinobi, with an S-class ranking. He was trained to be an assassin in the Anbu, and even became a captain. Are you seriously going to try and tell me that he can't send clones to scout it out? Hell, why isn't he sending clones now to scout ahead for danger? I don't know. I turned towards Kakashi. Sensei, how come we don't just kill Gato? Kakashi's eyes flickered towards me. Not our jurisdiction, for starters. So it would break some sort of rule if we did. But, technically, we would be protecting our client by doing so. This Gato is obviously a threat to Tazuna, and his bodyguard. Shouldn't we, I don't know, do everything we can to help? It would be a logical approach, Sasuke mildly pointed out. Naruto's face screwed up in distaste. Isn't he a civilian, though? But, Naruto, he's an evil tyrant. Don't you want to be the hero that storms in and defeats the big bad guy and saves an entire country? When painted in that light, Naruto seemed a lot more accepting. Ma, Kakashi chastised, placing a hand on top of my head again. Enough. This is your first C-rank mission. I won't let it turn into an assassination, moreover a civilian assassination. Trying to protect our innocence? I coyly asked. A losing battle, I know, but someone has to try. The war has long since been lost for me, Kakashi-sensei, I admitted to him. I am now with the dark side, enticing others with cookies so I may corrupt them. Kakashi removed his hand, placing it back inside his pocket. Then it would seem that we are on different sides of the war, Sakura. I gazed at him squarely, projecting a serious and calm air. Though we may see different sides, always know that I love you. There was the sound of a palm being introduced to a forehead, and I knew it had to come from Sasuke, because Naruto was giggling at me and Kakashi looked utterly torn between bemusement and being irritated again. The hairs on the back of my neck tingled, just as Kakashi shouted, "Get down." I dropped to the ground, hearing the whizzing sound of Zabuza's sword soar above us. There was a loud thud, and I leapt back to my feet. Zabuza appeared atop the sword, his back turned to us as he sneered down at us from above. "You shall be the first," I whispered, my eyes glued to the booty. "Zabuza," Kakashi greeted with a drawl, moving to take point. "Hi, Zabuza," I greeted, smiling brightly and winking at him. "You have a very nice booty. Not as nice as Kakashi-sensei's, but it's very good in its own right." Zabuza's cold gaze glanced over towards me. Despite projecting a somber air, his tone wasn't actually malicious or scary in the slightest. Then again, I knew he was a sweetie at heart and he likely wasn't going to just go around killing a bunch of green kiddos. I didn't realize Konoha had its own Mei. "You know Mayheim," I exclaimed. "Oh my dilly-dally gosh darn heck, that is so cool. I heard she's as lethal as she is beautiful." Zabuza snorted. "I didn't realize she had fans. I certainly like her. but I'm actually Kisame-sama's fangirl, I told him. That got an incredulous look. Are you serious? Well, I mean, did you know that sharks have 2D? Sakura, Kakashi snapped. For a flash, I thought I saw a brief spark of amusement in Zabuza's eyes, but it was gone too quick to really take note. Zabuza's gravelly voice drawled out, "Surrender the bridge builder, and I'll allow you to live." Mist drifted in, making my skin crawl because I felt Zabuza's chakra through it. His chakra by itself wasn't uncomfortable, or really had any sort of bad feeling, but the fact that there was so much of it made me feel distinctly not okay, and lethargic. Like hell we will. Naruto declared for all of us. We're about to unleash a can whoop ass on you if you don't turn around and leave. Formation mirrored around Tazuna, Kakashi ordered. Stay out of my way. This guy is out of your league. The three of us formed a tight triangle around Tazuna, and Zabuza let out a bark of a laugh. I warned you. Enjoy your last minutes of life. In a single motion, Zabuza grabbed his sword and leapt atop the nearby water, preparing his next ninjutsu. Zabuza began releasing his chakra in troves into the mist, creating a thick and almost tangible blanket of mist and chakra around us. I gasped upon this, not because it was surprising or neat, but because it suddenly got very hard to breathe. His chakra was everywhere, and with every breath I took it burned my lungs and left me breathless. I tried to breathe, I really did, but it got increasingly harder, enough so that my knees buckled and my head started spin. Naruto caught me. Sakura-chan. What's wrong? I gestured wildly towards my throat, retching. Sakura. Relax, Kakashi instructed. You have to purge his chakra from you, system like releasing a genjutsu. Keep your chakra circulating and purge as often as you can. It took a minute, with both my teammates watching me with varying levels of worry, but I was able to accomplish that. Hurt like a mother to breathe, though. Is it because we're chakra sensitive? Only explanation. How's about we pretend that didn't happen? I wheezed, my words coming out in a slur. Then I felt it. His killing intent. Beside me, I felt Sasuke and Naruto tremble. A shiver of excitement ran through me. Oh my. That is, oh my Madara's Innis, this is so amazing. A chilling laugh echoed. I didn't realize Konoha was capable of spitting out genin with a spine. Your killing intent is very intense, I said loudly. How do you do it? I mean, no one takes me seriously when I want to kill someone. I wonder why, Sasuke muttered beside me, his hands clenching tightly as he shook from fear. He glanced towards me. You aren't afraid. I'm actually excited. Please, stop. I rolled my eyes. Geez. Take that damn stick out, yo, but. Of course I'm not scared. Not only will Kakashi-sensei protect us, but I'm under the protection of the Goggle Gods. They blessed our trip by giving us the puddle, remember? That puddle was actually two missing nin that tried to kill us. I know. It was awesome. Can you please focus on protecting me? Tazuna wheezed, looking absolutely petrified. Don't worry, old man, Naruto tried to reassure him, his own voice cracking from fear. I nodded my head. Yeah, don't worry. Hey, Zabuza, can you do us a favor and hurry up and engage in a battle with Kakashi? I've never seen two S-ranked shinobi fight each other before in person, so I'm really hyped for this. Kakashi his head, his Sharingan whirling bright red throughout the mist. We wouldn't want to disappoint her, Zabuza. You aren't going to be able to sneak past all of us to kill Tazuna. You have to take me out first. I heard a scoff in the distance. Frowning, I pleaded, please. Pretty please. Silence greeted us for a solid minute before Zabuza flew out of the mist like a rabid dog towards Kakashi. Kubikiribocho was swung down hard and Kakashi had to use two kunai to combat the huge sword. Zabuza smirked. How can I say no to someone begging so politely for me to kill them? Going head-on against a member of Kiri no Shinobigatana Shichininshu is ballsy. I'll reward you by making your death swift. The two disengaged and Zabuza landed on the nearby water. I squealed, clapping my hands. Go, Kakashi-sensei. No offense, Zabuza, I would cheer for you, but, you know how it is. Let the epic began ensue. Obviously I couldn't see much of the battle, since they moved so quickly, but I could feel huge spikes of chakra, and hear the sounds of battle. Metal on metal, thunderous roaring water dragons, and the telltale signs of Chidori. I quivered with glee. This is so cool. Go Kakashi-sensei. Go, go, go. Sasuke swatted at me. Would you be quiet? We have to focus on protecting Tazuna. You aren't even a little amazed by what's happening. I demanded of him. Look at this. When are you ever going to see our sensei fight one of the 7 swordsmen? Only, like, 4 are still alive to this day. Naruto frowned, scratching his cheek and looking over at me. Are they really that cool, Sakura-chan? To become a swordsman, not only do you have to master Kenjutsu or Bukenjutsu, but you have to wield one of the legendary swords, which takes years of experience to handle. You have to also be at least S rank, and S rank is only given to the best of the best. All the Hokages are SS or even SSS. Wow! Naruto gaped, utterly amazed. So Kakashi and Zabuza are crazy strong. Crazy strong, I agreed. Who knows when's the next time we'll be able to see such an epic battle firsthand without having to actively participate. There could be so much we could learn from this, too. Like Kakashi is known for having learned over 1,000 ninjutsus, so who knows what he might pull out his ass. Even Sasuke looked impressed. 1,000, I confirmed, then after hearing a particularly impressive explosion, I shouted, woo! You got this Kakashi-sensei. If you win I won't grab your booty for the rest of the mission. There was a heartbeat of silence before Kakashi called out, promise. I swear in the name of Madara's Innes, I told him. Zabuza, if you win I promise I'll help you get Mei. I totally ship you guys together. Another loud crash echoed, followed by silence. The hell you will. Who's Mei? Naruto asked me. A famous Jonin from Kurigakure, I explained to him. She'll become the next Mizukage, I bet. Then, remembering something, I opened my backpack and pulled out one of my bingo books. I had actually bought, like, 10. I had to decorate my room with Kisame-sama posters somehow and the only picture available of him was in a bingo book. So I had to buy one bingo book so I could keep a picture in my wallet, then another to blow up into a poster, then another to blow up into another poster, then I had to give one to Hinata because she didn't know what he looked like and everyone should know what Kisame-sama looked like. I also planned on sneaking into Guy's apartment somehow in the future after he met Kisame-sama and gluing his picture everywhere with his name written all over his apartment so he would never dare to forget the great man's name. My hands worked quickly to flip towards Mei's page. I proudly held out her picture for my team to see. Isn't she beautiful? Don't you think she'd make a cute couple with Zabuza? No, I heard Zabuza shout followed by the sound of 10 paper bombs going off. Admit that you love her, I cried out. You're insane, Tazuna whispered, his eyes wide. What are you doing? Fighting for my ship, I declared passionately. Then turning to face Naruto I grabbed his hands. You support me, right? Naruto shrugged. Sure. Zabuza and Mei forever. Yes, I hissed out slowly. Another has joined the fandom. You are a true friend, Naruto. That made him beam. I am a pretty neat friend, huh? The best, I agreed, then slung an arm around his shoulder. Zabuza and Mei together forever and ever. I will butcher you, brats. I'm surrounded by idiots, Sasuke grumbled quietly. I turned to wink at him over my shoulder. Ah, no longer scared. Sasuke blinked in surprise, then looked down at his hands. How could anyone be scared while you're spewing crap out of your mouth? I didn't realize the Uchiha were capable of such crude language, I chortled, savoring how that made him glare hatefully at me. There was another loud explosion. Now enough of this, let us watch the show. With rapt attention, I watched the battle between Zabuza and Kakashi grow more and more destructive. They had easily destroyed a good portion of the trees, ground, and general area around them. Fortunately for me, the mist was beginning to clear as Zabuza was starting to run low on his chakra. I could see Kakashi was beginning to gain the upper hand, and just as Kakashi was about to deliver a fatal blow, Senbon needles soared through the air and clipped either side of Zabuza's neck. The Kurkagakure missing nin tucked forward and passed out, presumably dead to all other onlookers. Kakashi stepped towards the body, kunai in hand. He paused when Haku, in his Anbu disguise, appeared in between him and Zabuza. Haku bowed shallowly and stiffly. Thank you. I had been looking for a chance to eliminate Zabuza for a while now. You sound pretty, I sighed dreamily. Are you going to take Zabuza away now? Haku nodded shortly. Yes. His body belongs to Kurigakure. Thank you, once more, for your assistance. Wait a minute, who the hell are you? Why are you? Quiet, Naruto, Kakashi ordered softly. He's a hunter nin, an Anbu sent from Kurigakure to hunt down Zabuza. But he's just a kid. You will find in this world there are people younger than you, and stronger than I, Kakashi responded simply, then nodded briefly towards Haku. I bid you farewell, Konoha shinobi, Haku intoned, disappearing into the mist with Zabuza. I guess it's a good thing that ended when it did, Kakashi mumbled. I inched towards him. Why's that, sensei? Because I'm about to pass out, Kakashi confessed as he tucked forward and fell into my loving arms. With a completely innocent smile on my face, I whispered into his ear, I shall take care of you, my sweet. There was a low groan in response. Using Naruto's clones, we carried Kakashi back to Tazuna's house. After Tazuna's daughter, Tsunami, gave us a makeshift room, I kicked the two boys out so I could work on Kakashi. I rummaged through my backpack before I pulled out a medical textbook on how to treat chakra exhaustion. I read through the texts a few more times to make sure I understood what I was about to do before I began my work. Chakra exhaustion was a strain on the chakra network, and occasionally on the tenketsus. There wasn't much an Iryo nin could do to treat it, as the best treatment was the natural replenishment of the patient's chakra. Given our situation, though, that would have been inadvisable. I had used the technique once with Hinata with mixed results. Hinata understood I wanted to become an Iryo nin and supported me as best she could, like the sweetie she was. When she ran low on chakra one evening, she asked if I wanted to try giving her my chakra. I had technically succeeded in giving her some of my chakra, but the ratio to what I tried to give her to what she actually received was heavily imbalanced. There was another technique that allowed me to transfer chakra from a third party, but I had never had the chance to practice it and I didn't want to risk hurting Kakashi further. The only risk in giving him my own chakra was chakra exhaustion for myself, something much more preferable than having our biggest means of defense out like a light. Gently, I placed my hand over Kakashi's chest, the heart tenketsus were the biggest ones in the body, and called forth my chakra. Blue chakra covered my hand until I was able to pick out my elemental nature. The green chakra hummed quietly as I slowly began to guide it through Kakashi's clothes, skin, and muscles and into his tenketsu. His tenketsu greedily sucked in what I could give, and I was surprised at how much chakra I was able to transfer. After using up about half my reserves, I pulled my hand back and did another diagnostic test. Sweet. He's no longer on the verge of death, I thought happily. I'll take a chakra pill after tending to the boys and use whatever I have left to give Kakashi more chakra. That ought to be enough to allow him to wake up naturally and not be in any pain. He'll still feel shaky, but at least his pathways won't ache. I pulled the blankets up over Kakashi, and took out a coolant gel to rub on his forehead. Patients with frequent chakra exhaustion occasionally developed a fever. The gel should help keep him cool in case that happened. Satisfied I had done what I could for my favorite teacher, I left the room. I almost tripped on Naruto and Sasuke, who were sitting right outside by the door. "He gonna be okay?" Naruto asked hesitantly. "He'll be fine," I promised him. "Only chakra exhaustion. Let me heal up your guy's bruises before I finish with him, though." "I'm fine," Sasuke grunted. "Either let me heal you, or I steal your underwear and sell it to your fangirls." A vague look of horror crossed his face before the little Avenger grudgingly allowed me to heal his bruised ribs. I once again sent praise to the goggle gods, Jashin, and Madara's Innis that no one had broken any bones. I could heal, technically, all parts of the body with the Shosen. That didn't mean they were permanent fixes, or particularly good healings. Shosen merely acted as an encouragement for natural regrowth of the body. Of course, when using Shosen, you had to have an understanding of anatomy to make sure things regrew correctly. A reason why not everyone was trained to use it was because if applied sparingly, or without direction, things regrew as mutations inside the body, cancer. The kind of cancer that killed you off within hours of being grown. Knowledge of how the body was supposed to work, so when using the Shosen one could accurately guide the regrowth of cells, was paramount. And thanks to my eidetic memory and all my previous life's knowledge, I actually had that knowledge. Okay, well, I had enough of that knowledge to use Shosen. In the past week, I made sure to become extremely intimate with the cardiovascular system, and the heart in particular. So, technically, I could heal anything. But I wouldn't, because I shouldn't. There were simply some injuries that were too risky with my novice knowledge to even attempt. Brain, for example, reproductive system, hell, the entire nervous system and the majority of the tenketsus. Also, bones. Bones themselves weren't tricky to learn, so much as tricky to do. They required the most chakra to regrow properly. Healing a perfectly broken bone would take almost 3/4 of my chakra, whereas healing a sliced artery would be almost nothing. Why bones were so chakra intensive was a medical mystery at the moment. Or at least for me, since I hadn't come across any specific explanation, yet. With gentle hands, I wiped off the cooling gel from Kakashi's forehead and reapplied new coolant. There was a subtle shift in the atmosphere, and I felt Kakashi tense underneath my hand before I was knocked into the wall, a kunai at my throat. I beamed at Kakashi, despite the groggy ex-Anbu staring at me with eyes like a dead fish. "Kakashi-sensei." He blinked, life returning to his eye as he released me. Ignoring the stinging in my shoulders, I continued to smile happily at my favorite teacher. "You were worried I was going to take advantage of you, weren't you?" "Don't worry, I wouldn't do that kind of thing. Not this early on in our relationship, at least." Kakashi chuckled weakly, sitting back down in his bed with a wince. "Ah, yeah, you okay?" "I'm fine," I reassured him cheerfully. "I'm way more worried about you, though. I tried to transfer as much as my chakra to you as I could. I healed your bruises, too." Thank you, Sakura-chan," Kakashi said, giving me his eye-crinkle smile. I squealed, burying my face with my hands and squirming with delight at the honorific. That was high praise from Kakashi, since he never added a chan to my name after I began making my half-ass passes at him. "Praise whore." Kakashi his head at me. "You seem to enjoy praises from me." "Immensely," I confessed, still riding the giddy high off his praise. "If I consistently praise you, would stop making passes at me?" "Oh, wow." I froze, a frown on my face as I considered his question. I don't know. I love them both so much." "Food for thought, then, Sakura-chan," Kakashi whispered encouragingly. I squealed again in utter delight. "Okay. I won't make any more physical advancements, okay? I promise. I can't stop words from coming out at times, but I can stop with the booty grabs for a while. I'll take what I can at this point." I reached over and affectionately patted the top of his head. "Is this okay, Though, because I'm a very touchy-feely kind of person and I crave hugs like nobody's business. Kakashi HM'd. I will allow one physical appropriate contact per day outside of typical contact for our line of work. Knowing that that was likely going to count as my only contact for the day, I savored the sensation of his outrageously soft hair for as long as I reasonably could before pulling back. Do you use something special for your hair? My hair isn't anywhere near as soft as yours. Genetics, I'm afraid. I would have your babies just to carry on that beautiful hair lineage. Kakashi stared at me, and I sheepishly looked away. Sorry, I have no filter, I apologized. I hadn't noticed. My head. Oh, Kakashi-sensei. Yes, Zabuza is definitely still alive. I figured as much. Okay. Good. Glad we're on the same page, then. You want to tell the others, or shall I? Kakashi made a sound. Why don't you tell them, and when you're done tell Naruto and Sasuke to meet me outside for some training. I bowed to him. Your wish is my command. Really? No, but I will do this for you. We're ready to begin training, Kakashi began, leaning on a crutch. The four of us stood in the middle of a small clearing nearby Tazuna's house in the early morning. What I'm going to teach you is a chakra control technique, and is essential for every shinobi and kunoichi. We already know how to use chakra, Naruto complained. Can't you teach us something cool for once? Nope, Kakashi said cheerfully. You have to learn this first before I'll even think about teaching you any cool techniques. Sasuke's eyes narrowed. Fine. If we master this quickly, will you teach us something useful, then? This is useful. You're going to climb a tree. Climb a. Naruto stopped as Kakashi began to walk vertically up a tree. Wow. I hesitantly began. Kakashi-sensei, I already know. Kakashi waved his hand. I figured as much, given you can already perform the Shozen, but Naruto and Sasuke don't. Wouldn't you say this is a valuable skill? Very much so, I agreed, then turned towards the boys. All you have to do is channel chakra into your feet and stick onto any flat surface. Essentially correct, Kakashi agreed. Naruto cheered. All right, I'll reach the top in the first try. Sasuke smirked. Not in a million years, dead last. He tossed down two kunai that landed at their feet. Use that knife to mark where you are able to climb up with your current ability. Then try to make a new mark above that mark. You guys aren't good enough to climb by walking, so run to give yourself a good head start. Got it. Naruto grabbed his kunai and grinned. This is going to be too easy. Naruto then rushed forward, Sasuke following closely behind. I decided to ignore them, instead turning to Kakashi. And before you ask, I already know water walking, too, I told him. I mean, I can't fight on water, but I can walk on it and whatnot. I was actually hoping I could get your permission for a different sort of training. Kakashi tilted his head. What do you have in mind? I was wondering if, maybe, hopefully, pretty please, if I could go into town and offer my medical services to the local, I pleaded. Kakashi chuckled. As long as they understand you are not certified, I don't see why not. I beamed. Yes. You are the best sensei ever. Kakashi rubbed sheepishly at the back of his head. I don't know about that. Make sure you're back before it gets dark out, okay? Okay. I chirped, already turning on my heel and practically sprinting off. The town of Waves was as depressing and sullen as anyone would think it would be under an idiotic tyrant. If I had the know-how, I would have just gone on and killed Gato myself while Zabuza was out of commission. Save us all a headache. But, I didn't have the know-how, and I understood the importance of the lessons the mission had to impart on Naruto and Sasuke. I looked around, seeking out the first injured or sickly person I could find. I made sure to have my backpack on hand, so I could consult the textbooks if I came across anything tricky. My eyes settled on a group of dirty, ragged children at the corner of the street. A grin stretched across my face and I called to them, "Hey, kiddos. Want some free candy?" Oh, my. Moderas. Innis. The way their faces lit up like fireworks made me giggle in amusement. They rushed over to me as I pulled out the candy and kneeled before them. Already, I could see how malnourished, bruised, and battered they were. "Hello, practice. Extra." So, I began, wiggling my eyebrows at Kakashi. "During that fight with Zabuza, how'd I do?" Kakashi looked up from his book and blinked owlishly at me. "What? I totally threw him off his game by making him flustered." "You're welcome, by the way." Kakashi seemed genuinely surprised. "You mean you did that on purpose?" "Yes, I lied. I totally did not think up that reason 5 minutes ago for the hopes that you would praise me." Kakashi shook his head, chuckling. "I see. Good job, Sakura-chan." I squealed. "Feel shame, you praise whore." "Never." I took a long swig of my water, feeling increasingly more tired with every second that passed by. While healing the children, my shosen caught the attention of surrounding adults who then asked if I was a doctor. I told them I training to become one, which seemed more than good enough for them. For an hour, I was pulled across town as people begged me to heal loved ones. Then one of them suggested setting me up in a specific location and bringing people to me. So, they set me up in the old clinic the doctor had left towards the beginning of Gato's reign, and the place had been thoroughly ransacked since then for precious medicine. Feeling in a particular mood, I took off my hoodie and pulled out a long white doctor coat I bought for such an occasion. Granted, I had hoped to use it in another elaborate ploy to coax another amusing reaction from Kakashi, but given that I had chosen praise over such a thing, the plan would never come to fruition. Villagers lined up outside, each with varying degrees of illness or injuries. Many villagers helped carry the more significantly injured towards the front of my line, and right off the bat I was greeted with ghastly infected cuts and oozing orifices. I had to consult my textbooks repeatedly to treat most of the cases brought to me. All broken bones I said, sometimes I had to rebreak, which made me cringe the first few times, and put in a cast, knowing better than to try and heal them on my own. Illnesses, I did what I could to alleviate their symptoms, but I stressed they would have to visit a proper doctor for medication. I was able to diagnose a fair few cases, which seemed to help them as they knew home remedies. Infected wounds, I siphoned off as much of the injection as I could and purged it with my chakra before closing the wound and prescribing bed rest and giving them what antibiotics I could spare. They would be feverish for a while, but with most of the infection sucked out, and the wound closed, there was a good chance they would recuperate on their own. Unfortunately, that was not always the case. There were 2 men brought to me who had gangrene severe enough that the only way to save them was amputation. Something of which I was really not qualified to do, so I sent a villager to go to Tazuna's home and tell them that I needed some kind of clone of Kakashi for a bit. Half an hour later, one shadow clone of Kakashi was at my side. Was all I said, gesturing towards the unconscious men. I had numbed and knocked them out. They rested side by side in the clinic, faint moans rising out of them occasionally. Kakashi heaved out a sigh. I probably should have anticipated this would happen. Apparently, they've been without a doctor for 6 months, I mumbled. Kakashi scratched his cheek. Tazuna mentioned something like that, yes. He made a hum. You know this doesn't pertain to our mission, right? These people we need to guard Tazuna. You said I could. I know what I said, Sakura, but you need to understand your priorities. Tomorrow you must guard Tazuna. You cannot be here to heal or play doctor, and judging from that line outside, you didn't tell them that. It honestly didn't cross my mind that I wouldn't be able to take care of them. I flushed. Kakashi squatted down beside me, so his eyes were level with my own. Do you think this all a game? I bit my tongue, glaring at him instead. I asked you here for your help. If you don't want to help, then don't. I'll figure it out on my own. Will you now? Yes, I snapped irritably. Okay, then, Kakashi said, disappearing in a puff of smoke. My hands quivered, and I clenched them into fists, fury churning inside of my stomach. I took a deep breath. I let it out slowly, shoving down my anger and all negative emotions. Slowly, I turned back towards the two men. I got this. I returned to Tezuna's home, covered in dried blood, after dusk. I didn't step inside the home, though, because I realized how I must have looked. Instead, I headed down to the water, cleaned myself up, and pulled my clean red hoodie over my dirty clothes. Naruto and Sasuke had not returned, but I found Tazuna sitting by the kitchen table with Tsunami and Kakashi. Tsunami smiled at me. Welcome back, Sakura-chan. My back stiffened, and for a moment the stench of blood and I forced a bright smile on my face, shoving everything far, far down inside of me. Thanks. I got a lot of training done today. Tsunami nodded. I saw the line outside the clinic. Were you able to meet with everyone? Everyone critical, came my response. I'll be guarding Tazuna tomorrow, though, so it'll be a while before I can play doctor again. If anyone noticed how I stumbled over my words, they did not comment. Kakashi eyed me carefully, before he gave me an eye smile. I'm glad you were able to gain some practical experience, Sakura-chan. Again, my back stiffened. I stretched my smile wider. Yeah, great day. Really fantastic day. I'm going to head to bed. What time do you want to leave, Tazuna? Before sunrise, Tazuna grunted, offering me a faint smile. Great. Awesome. I left the room. The next morning, I got up and ready well before the boys and met Tazuna in the kitchen. Tsunami offered us each a homemade lunch, her gaze lingering a moment or two on my face. Sakura-chan, did you sleep all right? Huh, yeah, why, your eyes look a little puff. I laughed, loudly. Oh, it's just allergies. You see, last night before I came home the goggle gods told me to smell some flowers on the way back. Being the loyal disciple I am, I smelled all the flowers I could find. I must have had a reaction to one of them. She looked at me dubiously. I see. I affectionately patted her arm. Don't worry about me. I'm a happy person at heart. Nothing brings me down. That got a chortle from Tazuna. I believe it. You laughed in the face of death the other day. Death is just the next adventure. Kakashi appeared at the doorway, although I wasn't sure how long he might have actually stood there, listening. Heading out. I nodded my head, projecting a cheerful demeanor. Yeah, oh, here, Kakashi-sensei. I handed him a bottle of chakra pills. Those are chakra vitamins my Ka-chan bought me a while ago. You're supposed to take some when you're chakra exhausted, and it'll promote a faster regeneration. Kakashi deftly took the small glass bottle from my hands, his gaze lingering on the bright pink bow wrapped around it. He looked back up at me, an eye smile on his face. Thank you, Sakura-chan. I smiled at honorific. I'll see you later. Remember to use your flares if you run into trouble. I know. Morning mist drifted on the water below the bridge. I watched Tazuna work, from where I stood on top of the water below. I may not have been able to continue to play doctor, but that didn't mean I was going to stop training. Zabuza wouldn't be able to act for 5 more days, at least, and Haku was too kind to act with any kind of malicious intent without Zabuza's orders. It would be an exorbitant amount of wasted time to merely sit around watching people work. So while I stood on top of the water, my fingers worked on a cross stitch. It was a little awkward doing that standing up. I had to have the thread tucked under my armpit and my fingers were already getting tired after 2 hours. Still, I needed the sewing practice, and cross-stitching was the best way to practice my sutures. Not to mention I had to learn how to sew if I wanted to remake all of my plushies. No Amazon or cons there. My stomach growled as I neared the end of my picture Garfield, the original grumpy cat, and I knew it was time to eat lunch. Hastily, I climbed back up the nearest support beam and hopped over the railing onto the bridge. One of Tezuna's workers gave a startled surprise at that, to which I awarded him with a saucy wink. I headed over to where I had placed my backpack and lunch. I found Tezuna sitting on a stack of cement mix, eating his own lunch and chatting with some of his fellow workers. With a bright, warm smile, I sat on the ground with the group of people. They all returned my smile with grins of their own. "You're Sakura-sensei, right?" One of the workers, Izu if I remembered correctly, asked. "I'm not a certified doctor yet," I told him, "but yes, I am Sakura." Izu's grin stretched. "You were amazing yesterday. When the bridge is done, will you?" "If I have my sensei's permission, I would love to," I promised him. "I'm sorry I wasn't able to get to everyone, and about the amp." Izu shook his head. "We all know you did what you could, and you definitely saved a lot of people's lives yesterday." That made me blush, because it was a bit of an exaggeration. The vast majority of them could gone on well enough until a proper doctor could arrive at the village once the bridge was complete. I wouldn't say that. I'm glad I could help, though. Kensuke, another worker, although he was older than Tezuna, grunted and waved me off. "Will you be guarding us until the bridge is finished, or will your teammates be joining you?" "Most likely it'll just me for a while," I answered. "My teammates require some more training that I've already completed. Kakashi-sensei feels confident that Zabuza won't be able to attack us for a while, which is why he feels comfortable leaving me alone to guard. The main concern right now are low-level thugs, which I am more than capable of handling." The others chuckled and Tezuna boasted, "We'll have this bridge finished before those brats even finish their training." That elicited more laughter, and more workers came over to join us for their lunch. In all, it was a very relaxing and happy day. That pattern continued over the next few days. Sasuke and Naruto only finished their training very late one night, and the next morning Naruto was too tuckered out to wake up properly. We decided to leave him behind, while the three of us followed Tezuna towards the bridge. I wasn't overly surprised when we found all of the unconscious, hopefully, workers at the bridge. "I sense Zabuza in the mist," I told them, as I hurried over to the nearest body and checked for a pulse. I was relieved to find one. "Thank you for not killing them, Zabuza." There was a dry chuckle that echoed throughout the mist. "They weren't worth the effort. I hope you brats didn't miss me too much." "I'm glad May's lover is okay," I mumbled out loud. "I am not." There was a pause. "Hand over the bridge builder, or I chop off that pretty little head of yours." I giggled, covering my cheeks in a mock gesture to hide my non-existent blush. "You think I'm pretty?" Zabuza chose not to verbally respond. Instead, the mist began to thicken enough that I could no longer pick out his unique signature at a specific point. All I sensed and felt was his chakra around me, and once more I had to consciously and consistent purge my system of his chakra. "Enough." Kakashi moved in front of me. "I'll handle Zabuza. Sakura stay with Tezuna, and Sasuke." "I already know," Sasuke said, taking the first leap forwards. Haku moved in the same instant, appearing out of the mist and meeting Sasuke head-on. I grabbed Tezuna's hand. "Come on. Let's try and grab all the workers and move them out of the way." "All right," Tezuna stammered, and the two of us grabbed the first worker and moved him off. I felt Zabuza's chakra spike, and there was a loud clanging noise. Kakashi had intercepted Zabuza's first attack on Tezuna, and the two were locked in battle soon afterwards. I forced Tezuna to move quickly. I trusted Kakashi to keep Zabuza off us long enough that we could gather all of the workers. It didn't take long to accomplish such, perhaps 3 minutes. When I had everyone lined up together and to the side, I did a preliminary examination of each and determined that the worst case they would suffer would be a mild concussion. Then I was right back in front of Tezuna, kunai in hand, and I watched the battles unfold around us. Go Kakashi-sensei! I cheered happily, leaping up and down and using my kunai like pom-poms. Gimme a B. Gimme an E. Gimme a S and T. What's that spell? Best. 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 Kakashi's the best. If you don't believe me, put him to the test. I finished with a whoop and another cheer. Kakashi's Chidori flared to life and he deftly sliced through Zabuza's latest water dragon. I tilted my head to the side, as I watched their entirely epic battle. Taking a deep breath, I bellowed out, "May and Zabuza sittin' in a tree." Suddenly there were 4 furious Zabuza water clones headed my way. I gave a gleeful shout that I was finally being included, and no longer being left out. Unfortunately, the water clones had 1/10 of Zabuza's power, and one good hit was all it would take to dispel them. Even as weak as I was, which was definitely stronger than Canon. Sakura at the time, considering I had actually been training and working hard, the clones didn't cause me too much of a hassle. They did nick me good on the cheek, which made me inordinately happy that I got to put on a cute band-aid. It was pink and had puggies on it, on my cheek. It didn't take long for Haku to summon his ice mirrors, to which I had to briefly change up my cheer to cheer for Haku because the poor boy looked so depressed to be fighting others, and he deserved a little love. Then it was right back to cheer for Kakashi because their fight was starting to escalate and that shit was cool. They didn't fight nearly as over the top in the anime as they were at the moment, whereas the Haku and Sasuke fight was so canon it was almost boring to watch. To be honest, I wasn't entirely sure if Haku would even have a chance to die for his mentor. Kakashi was pulling out some crazy shit in hopes of suppressing Zabuza fast enough that Zabuza wouldn't be a genuine danger to his students. A change brought on by my mere existence. Did I motivate Kakashi enough to try, or was the manga incorrect in saying that Kakashi half-assed and lazily fought Zabuza in the first place? Or perhaps, was Kakashi sincerely concerned that if he didn't try hard against Zabuza, I had successfully pissed off the missing nin enough that he would murder me in a most horrendous fashion? Probably one of the first two. It simply never made any sense for Kakashi to not go entirely all out against Zabuza immediately. The man was traumatized from his past, enough so that he didn't allow a single comrade to die since Rin while on a mission. There's no way Kakashi would trust his comrades to take care of themselves, so he has to be the one to kill all the enemies. If the manga wasn't canonical for this, though, then what else might be wrong? Who knows? Might be fun to find out. I always loved a good mystery thriller. You can't count this as a thriller when you aren't even a little scared. Hell, you're absolutely delighted to be put in a life or death situation, you masochist. This is true. I love my life so much right now. Like, this is friggin' fantastic. I need to hurry up and finish my Kisame plushie so I have something to hug whenever I want. Naruto showed up with all his grand cuteness, leaping straight into the fray with the Sasuke-Haku battle. Since my future son had shown up, I knew it was time to cheer for him. Go Naruto, go! You've got VICTORY, so split that V and dot that I and bring mama that CTORY. I waved my hands in the air like I just didn't care. Aren't you even a little concerned for your teammates? Tazuna inquired incredulously. I shook my head. Nah, I have complete faith in them. Besides, doesn't it make you feel better having someone who is entirely nonchalant around? A little, Tazuna admitted. Do you mind if we move closer to Naruto and Sasuke's battle with Haku? I have a feeling I'm about to get a chance to cover Sasuke in hot pink band-aids. I don't mind at all, Tazuna said, and the two of us moved across the bridge for a front row seat into the teenage angsty battle. I half-heartedly listened to Haku's tragic backstory, having heard it well over 100 times by now. I could even slightly mouth the words as Haku spoke them, I knew it that well. Once storytime was over, the trio began their battle once more, and I picked up my cheering. My cheering respectfully died off when Sasuke activated his Sharingan, and Naruto was thoroughly covered in Senbon. Naruto struggled with consciousness, and I itched to pull them out and cover him in bandages, but I knew I couldn't get to them as long as Haku's Kekkei Genkai was active. If I went to them, then Tazuna would be left entirely unguarded and all three of us would be trapped inside with Haku. Instead, I patiently waited for Sasuke to properly pass out after taking numerous Senbon to the knee. I waited until Kurama of the Fluff made his grand appearance and Naruto destroyed the ice mirrors as he threw Haku away with one furious punch that in the process shattered his mask. While Naruto began his therapy no jutsu, I heard Kakashi's and Zabuza's battle slowly begin to dwindle down into less extreme forms. I couldn't watch them, though, as I had to dress Sasuke's wounds. I kneeled beside my broody teammate, Tazuna nervously looking down at him beside me. Is he gonna be okay? Of course he will be. I snorted, pulling one Senbon at a time. Once a Senbon was pulled out, I placed a doctored hot pink band-aid on it, and patted it down before moving on to the next one. Some of the Senbon required very careful remove as they pierced awfully close to some vital spots and I didn't want to waste what precious chakra I had healing Sasuke when I would desperately need it later. I was so absorbed in my meticulous process, I still had to use diagnostic tests to confirm none of his nerves were damaged, given the nature of Senbon, that I was honestly surprised to hear the loud barking noises of Kakashi's pack. My head immediately snapped out, eyes widening. Then I realized that I sensed a whole bunch of small chakras gathering at the end of the bridge. Fate no Jutsu strikes again. Mirroring the manga, Zabuza was thoroughly trapped by Kakashi's pack. I shot up onto my feet, as Kakashi built up his Chidori. Wait, Kakashi-sensei, don't. Of course my words came out too clumsily and slow to be processed fast enough to stop what was happening. I knew it was coming, of course, but there wasn't a whole lot I could do to prevent it. I couldn't very well ask Kakashi to spare Zabuza, or Haku, could I? Not until the whole Gato thing was cleared up, and I had no idea when in the hell he would be showing up exactly, and of course he would show up right around the same time shit would hit the fan, bastard. I wasn't strong enough to stall them myself. No, I could not prevent it, but I could fix it. And I would. I felt Haku's chakra fluctuate beside me and one moment he was with Naruto, and the next he was in front of Zabuza, taking a Chidori straight through the chest. Naruto, guard Tazuna, I snapped out, sprinting full speed towards my future harem. Naruto barely sputtered out a reply. Then I was there, and I tackled straight into Haku, twisting our bodies around so he landed on top of me. I didn't even look up to take note of the surprised expressions on Zabuza and Kakashi's face. Instead, I whipped out the single more expensive thing I had ever bought in my entire life. A very special seal. One that was so ridiculously expensive, I was going to use all my cunning and wit to convince Naruto to become a seal master so he could make the damn seals for me himself, because Sweet Berry Loving knew that shit was outrageous. 6 months of advance allowance, almost all of my mission savings, and it counted as my damn birthday gift from my parents. If he wasn't so damn cute. Nerves pricked at me, as I knew I had to move swiftly. Laying Haku on the ground, his head resting in my lap, I pulled out the one-time use seal and placed it above the hole in his chest. Pouring chakra into the seal, it lit up a pale green before dissolving into his skin, and Haku took a shuddering breath, his chest rising up and down despite there being a hole where his heart technically should have been. The number 7 glowed a pale green where the seal had been placed. When I looked back up towards the 2 elite shinobi, Zabuza took the moment to maneuver out of Kakashi's summons and leap away to gain some distance. What are you doing, Sakura? Kakashi asked, turning towards me. Before you guys continue with your death threats, and whatnot, I think you should pay attention to the end of that away, I said, pointing dramatically towards the end of the bridge. Their eyes followed to where my finger was pointing, and I felt the mist clear up. I took a great breath of relief at that. At the end of the bridge was Gato in all his hideous self. Gato. Zabuza asked, incredulous. What are you doing here? Why do you have those henchmen? Our strategy has changed a little bit, Gato said in that whiny voice of his. Since hiring shinobi are so expensive, I thought it would be best if you died here. I had hoped these brats would be able to finish you off, after you had killed Tazuna, but, it looks like my men and I will have the pleasure of killing you all. I vote that Zabuza joins our side and kills Gato and all those men I put out there. If you don't make any more suggestions about May and myself, I suppose I'll join your shitty-ass team for the moment to clean up this moron, Zabuza grumbled. Okay. I lied. A cough racked through Zabuza's body and he spat out some blood. Your Chidori, Kakashi. I could say the same thing about your damn sword, Kakashi muttered, clutching at a heavily bleeding arm. I've got left, Zabuza said. And Gato. I'll take right, then. And then they were gone, and heads began to fly off bodies and into the air. I clapped my hands enthusiastically while Naruto and Tazuna joined beside me. Naruto then noticed Haku in my lap, and he gasped. Is he? Shish. I shushed him. This is a rare moment where we get to see how utterly powerless civilians are to shinobi. Even if the shinobi are almost out of chakra, bleeding profusely, and look about ready to pass out. Was all Naruto could say in response to that. When the massacre was over, and it barely lasted 30 seconds, Zabuza and Kakashi returned to us. Then Zabuza's knees gave out and Zabuza fell to the ground, every inch of his body shaking and oozing blood. My gaze swept over to Kakashi, and I realized that he had relaxed. Knowing that was my chance, I leapt up from my spot, pulling out my first aid scroll. Naruto, help me with Zabuza. Naruto appeared surprised for a moment, then he noticed my scroll and without a word he appeared by my side the moment I reached Zabuza. What are you doing? Zabuza wheezed out. Saving your life, came my response. I unsealed the supplies from the scroll, feeling Kakashi's presence behind me. His hand rested on my shoulder and he squatted beside me. He did not say anything, though, merely watched as I handed Naruto a bottle of blood pills. Make him swallow 5 of these. I'm going to do a patch job on him because I need to conserve my chakra for the hardest part. Naruto nodded, clumsily pouring out pills in his hand before shoving one in Zabuza's mouth. Zabuza spat it out. Stop it, you damn brats. I don't want Haku to come out of this without a master, I impatiently snapped. Either you cooperate, or I stick needles in places that you don't want needles to stuck. Haku. Naruto stumbled, his eyes wide. He's really alive. I have him on a bypass seal, and I think I can probably hopefully save his life, but I first have to make sure Zabuza lives because apparently Haku is suicidal without him. Zabuza's eyes rested on me, unreadable. You're not lying. Not in this case, I confirmed. So will you cooperate? Zabuza closed his eyes. Fine. As Naruto fed the blood pills to Zabuza, I moved quickly to bandage what I could. Kakashi's hand fell away from my shoulder, and I felt him move to my left. Kakashi-sensei, Zabuza and Haku are my patients now, I told him, my tone brusque and firm. As their doctor, I will do everything in my power to keep him alive. They are no longer a threat to us. Kakashi eyed me, his thoughts unreadable for a solid minute. Are you sure you want to do this? My gaze stayed even with his. He's my patient now. My hands tightened into fists. Either help me, or leave. Kakashi's face was unreadable, a wall of apathy. Okay, I'll help. Shock poured over me like ice water on a snowy winter day. Through the corner of my eye, I saw him grab a needle and medical thread. Surprise fluttered through me again, along with a brief burst of happiness. Zabuza noticed what Kakashi was doing and mumbled, even you. My cute students are working hard to save your life, he said quietly. I don't want that to go to waste. Then he gave Zabuza that beautiful eye smile. Besides, it's not every day I get to save the life of someone after I so soundly defeat them. Zabuza snorted, and choked out a laugh which made more blood pool out of his wounds, and I slapped for that. Stop that. You be a good patient and remain perfectly still. The three of us worked quietly for several minutes. After Naruto was done feeding him the pills, he bandaged and disinfected the smaller wounds. We stopped the bleeding, and I was able to repair the largest of tendon tears in his arms. He would require more advanced healing than what I was capable of, but at the very least he had mobility in his arms again. Satisfied that he was not going to die for a while, I nodded my head. Okay. Good. I'll see what else I can do for you after I take care of Haku. Take care of Haku. We all turned our eyes to a groggy Sasuke, who looked a little funny with all those hot pink bandages on him. He walked towards us, grimacing from his stiff muscles. Naruto beamed. Sasuke, you had us worried. He shrugged, looking uncomfortable. Kakashi stood up, heading over to Sasuke. You going to be okay? Sasuke nodded, looking over at me. I answered for him. Haku missed all the vital spots. His tendons are going to be stiff for a while, but he'll make a full recovery. Only reason he passed out was because Haku hit a nerve cluster around his spine to induce a brief coma. Zabuza grunted as he sat up, slowly, because my hand was on his chest and I wasn't allowing him to move any faster than necessary, then snorted upon seeing the bandaged Sasuke. Sasuke glared and moved to remove the bandages, but I idly pointed out, if you start bleeding and pass out again, I'll dress you up into a cat girl. That got him to stop. I crawled over to where Haku was, doing another diagnostic examination. I looked around. Well, he's going to need a new heart, and there sure are a lot of hearts about to go to waste around here. Naruto's face twisted in obvious disgust, while Zabuza nodded slowly. Kakashi and Sasuke remained impassive. Zabuza shifted his weight before he stood up shakily. All right, tell me which one matches his blood type and I'll get it. Okay, I said easily, standing up, as well. All, need room to work. And some, makeshift nurses. I've never ever done this before, so I'll need someone to turn pages in my textbook and whatnot. I can do that. Naruto looked uncomfortable at the idea of harvesting organs, but he clearly didn't want Haku to die. You can use our house, Tazuna offered. We should go ahead and prepare, then. At the question, I glanced over at Tazuna and nodded. Yeah, as clean as you can make it, and, you'll probably want to lay down some trash bags around what you don't want to get bloodstained. Or something. I don't, Kakashi interrupted me before I could start getting flustered, for which I was grateful. It was already nerve-wracking what I was about to, and having to become an impromptu leader made me surprisingly uncomfortable. I'll set things up. When I return we'll move Haku. About that time the army Naruto had therapy no jutsu for showed up. I honestly almost forgot about that broody brat. I turned to Naruto. You started that, so you gotta make them leave and stay outta our way. Right, Naruto said, rubbing the back of his head sheepishly. He jogged over to where the men and women were, and I could hear their shouts of victory when he told them that Gato was dead. I'll be back shortly, Kakashi said bluntly, heading away. I glanced slyly over at Zabuza. You know, all those women are gonna wanna hug you to thank you for killing Gato. If anyone touches me I'll skin them alive, the missing nin grouched. I pointedly reached over and patted his shoulder. The look I got of sheer irritation was positively delicious. Okay, I said out loud. Tsunami had set us up with the spare room, and removed all the furniture inside except a large sturdy table, some chairs, and a waste basket. I noticed that there were seals drawn around the room, and when I pointed them out Kakashi admitted he drew them. I've had Irio Nin teammates before. was what he said. The seals are merely basic decontamination seals for emergency surgeries in the field. Haku laid bare-chested on the table, while Naruto held up my medical textbook beside Zabuza. It was a how-to for field heart transplants, written by none other than Tsunade. Zabuza had a chair pulled up on the opposite side of the table, next to Naruto, staring down at Haku's hole. Kakashi was on my right, appearing entirely relaxed. Sasuke was on my left, watching everything with curious eyes. Okay, I repeated. Zabuza, you have the heart. Zabuza grunted and pointed down towards the corpse. I'll harvest it when we're ready. Right, okay. First, I squinted at the textbook. First thing is to make sure the patient is on bypass. The seal has another. I glanced at the seal, reading the number it had burned into Haku's skin. 6 hours. That will keep Haku breathing, via directing his chakra system. And wasn't that something interesting to learn? The chakra system was so tightly wound with all of the other systems, that when one of the systems failed it directly affected the other. So if, say, someone's lungs collapsed, with the proper know-how she could still breathe through drawing in air into their chakra system and having their chakra regulate their body. Which made sense given how in the manga people blew out some justice that lasted way longer than what normal people could breathe. They had to be breathing somehow. Chakra was friggin' amazing. Next step, sanitation, which is already done. Now we have to open him up. And here's where it gets messy. Chakra flared to life around my hand, becoming heavily dense. The chakra scalpel was one of the first techniques I was required to learn, and one of the hardest for myself. Creating chakra dense enough to slice through bone and skin was a skill that only the Hyuga and Iryo Nin could boast about. Thankfully, Hinata was easily able to assist me, as the Hyuga also made their chakra significantly dense in order to block Tenketsus. And considering what happened to the last 2 patients I used it on, I felt extremely nervous. Well, the whole shebang made me nervous as hell. I had never done that kind of thing before, and it was all very, very intense. It wasn't a fight, but yet a life rested in my hands. Moreover, someone I happened to like very much depended on me. I did not do well with that kind of pressure. Relax. You aren't alone. Right. I made the incision as the picture showed, my hands trembling minutely. I knew I would have to have steady hands during the actual transplant and when I worked with the arteries and heart, so when I was done cutting Haku open properly I took a deep breath and waited until the shaking stopped before proceeding. Next is, I peered inside Haku's chest. Is something wrong, Sakura? Kakashi asked. I can't tell which artery is the, it looks very different than the diagram. That would be because of my Chidori, Kakashi patiently said before he moved his hand and pointed towards a squishy lump. That would be what you are looking for. Oh, was all I said before I tentatively began to urge the tissue to regrow around the damaged artery. I had to make sure all the surrounding organs and tissues were repaired and ready to receive the new heart before I made the swap. Then, Zabuza's hand drifted above Haku and his finger pointed towards another lump. That next. Relief settled inside of me. It made sense that the 2 renowned assassins would know all the vital anatomy, and I was extremely grateful they were able to discern the important parts from the mess that was Haku's chest. As I started to repair the arteries, the blood began to pump through them once more, and I had to seal, and by seal it was really a type of cauterize them off so Haku wouldn't start profusely bleeding out. Every time I seemed unsure of what to do next, either Kakashi or Zabuza would point me in the right direction. When my reserves were starting to protest heavily, I quietly asked for someone to hand me a chakra pill. Sasuke was the first one to move, placing it in my mouth quickly, as I was elbow deep at the moment. I swallowed it dry, disliking the bitter taste in my mouth. Once I had repaired as much as I reasonably could around Haku's surrounding organs, tissues, and other fun stuff, I knew it was time to make the transfer. Zabuza seemed to realize that, because he stiffly turned towards the corpse and pulled out a skinning knife. My arms were starting to grow heavy as I carefully pulled out bits of Haku's heart and placed them in the nearby waste basket. Once that was done, I found that Zabuza was holding out the new heart. Another shudder ran through me and I had to take another moment to recollect myself before I gently took the new heart. I couldn't honestly tell if it was a good heart, or not. It just felt like a lump of warm muscles in my hands, and another fit of anxiety hit me when I realized that I had reached the crucial moment. I had to successfully transplant the new heart and incorporate it with all of his repaired arteries. Swallowing roughly, I very slowly lowered the heart down. It fit a bit too snugly than Haku's previous heart, but a big heart was better than no heart. Naruto turned the page for me and I began to painstakingly slowly reconnect and unseal the arteries. Like before, when I felt hesitant, Kakashi or Zabuza would quietly point out where I had to go next and tell me what to do. "Oh, okay," I shakily said. "Now we have to restart his heart. Would you like me to do that, Sakura?" Kakashi gently asked. I nodded jerkily, pulling my hands out and stumbling backwards. Kakashi readjusted his sterile gloves before placing them on either side of the heart. There was a moment of silence, and then I felt, rather than saw, his chakra release. On the third try, the new heart began to beat. Zabuza let out a shaky chuckle. Tenacious brat. I knew he would be too much of a coward to die. My entire body shuddered and my knees gave out as relief crashed through me. I fell to the floor in a graceless lump. "Oh, my. Madara's. Inus." Naruto grinned at me and set the book down before he went over to me. He looked like he was about ready to hug me, but then realized I was covered in blood and stopped. He nodded. "I'll hug you after you shower." "Yay," I croaked. I can't seem to stand back up." "I can sew him back up," Zabuza muttered. "Kakashi, you should probably get your little doctor some fresh air before she passes out." Kakashi eyed Zabuza for a moment before he motioned for Sasuke and Naruto to follow him. "Come on, minions, let's get Sakura outside." I wheezed. "I feel like I'm going to throw up and pass out." "You very well might," Kakashi agreed, picking me up with one arm and throwing me over his shoulder. "I'll come back soon to visit Haku," Naruto exclaimed, grinning brightly at Zabuza. Then he paused. "And I guess you, too. You're kind of alright." Zabuza sneered at him. In the same moment Sasuke walked out of the room. An hour later, and I still could not keep from trembling. At the very least I no longer felt like I was going to throw up. Haku would have to see a proper doctor to finish repairing all of his internal injuries. I could only do a very thin patch job over the injuries, like a scab. Not to mention there was still the chance that the heart could be rejected by his body, or that I had forgotten something, or. Enough. Worrying about it isn't going to help. Kakashi and Zabuza supervised you. I'm sure if you made any major errors, they would have pointed them out. You have done what you could, so stop worrying about it. You're right. I don't deal well with stress. I began to shove what I felt inside. I had always been damned good at repression, sometimes it simply took a bit longer than other times. Naruto had gone to sit beside Haku, he would wake up after the bypass seal wore off, and I had no idea where Sasuke was. Zabuza was with Haku, asleep, last I saw, which was good since he was obviously still recovering, and Kakashi. I had found Kakashi, actually. He was on the roof of Tazuna's house, lazily leaning against the chimney as smoke curled up in the air. Tsunami was making a large meal in celebration of Wave's freedom from Gato. I sat down beside Kakashi, my hands shaking and my heart still beating fast. Adrenaline was starting to leave my system, and I knew I would crash soon, and hopefully when I woke up, I would have successfully repressed all of my anxieties, but before I did I wanted to talk to him. Thank you, Kakashi-sensei. Without you, I really wouldn't have been able to. Thank you. Kakashi turned his head towards me, blessing me with an eye smile. Ma, your intentions were good. It's not often our enemies can become our allies, and even less that we can save lives, and I'm not so cold-hearted as to make my student flounder on something clearly important to her. Thank you, I mumbled, my eyes starting to burn and a shudder running through me. Kakashi's eyes lingered on mine, then followed down to my cheek. He turned his gaze back towards the forest, not commenting. A heartbeat passed and he pulled out a small tattered cloth and handed it to me. I gripped it tightly, shuddering out a choked back quiet cry. I heard about the men with gangrene, Kakashi said softly. My back stiffened. I'm sorry. Another shudder ran through me, that time out of grief. I felt a hand rest on my head. Ma, I think I'll stay out here a while. The weather's nice. I woke up on my sleeping bag in the living area. It was either late morning, or early evening because dull light filtered through the window. Slowly, I sat up. I grimaced when I realized I was essentially caked in dry blood. Ew. I need a shower, bad. I reached over to my backpack and pulled out my spare change of clothes, heavy-duty and odorless body wash, and shampoo, conditioner. As I headed out, I peeked in on Haku. Naruto was chattering amiably in a one-sided conversation with Zabuza while Haku slept, seemingly peacefully. I was relieved that Haku seemed to be stable. Moving quickly, I headed out towards the water by Tezuna's house and plunged inside, still clothed. After my impromptu wash, I laid the drying clothes by the rocky shore, changed into my fresh clean clothes and headed back to Tezuna's. It was around noon when I arrived, to which I was greeted by a cheerful Tsunami who told me my team left to guard Tezuna while he finished work on the bridge. Kakashi's pav. She had fallen asleep at his side, still covered in dried blood from trying to save Haku's life. He had thought that Naruto would be the biggest handful on his team. Kakashi was certainly surprised that it was the supposed kunoichi of the year that was the surprising. Her academy reports indicated that she had a passionate personality, but Kakashi wouldn't have thought that that was they meant. Everything she did so with a huge smile on her face and a kind of gleam in her eyes. The world was a bright, beautiful and amusing place for her to enjoy, and a part of Kakashi was jealous of that kind of optimism. Kakashi would never, think so highly of the world no matter the age. He contributed it towards her own naivete. She had never experienced real combat outside of academy, and was a genuine sheltered civilian girl. Unlike Naruto, or Sasuke, she had no reason to see the ugly truth. That small jealous part of Kakashi wanted her to see the world for what it was, to take it seriously because those who did not take it seriously enough suffered the most. He wanted her to learn quickly, and understand the brutal nature of their career, and that the world was not as bright as she seemed to think it was. The rest of him, though, wanted her to remain that kind of sunny opposition that he hadn't seen since Rin and Obito. Since before Rin and Obito had seen the frontlines for the first time. It was ridiculous, though. No one could keep that kind of light inside of them after they experienced death firsthand. Then she laughed with glee at Zabuza, genuinely happy to watch the battle unfold. She had trusted Kakashi enough so that she had absolute faith in his ability to protect them from Zabuza, despite knowing exactly who Zabuza was. That, and her self-preservation seemed to be missing. He thought, then, that perhaps she simply didn't understand death. Everyone had to have self-preservation, it was a basic human instinct, but maybe someone who didn't understand the fear of dying wouldn't. But, she did understand death, or at least to a certain extent. When she lost both of her patients after trying to amputate, she came home and cried quietly into her pillow. Her fellow teammates did not wake when she cried, but Kakashi did because he had been listening for it. She cried well into the morning, then she got up, put that bright smile back on her face, and carried on. Kakashi wondered if all her smiles were merely a mask for sadness, or if she sincerely still loved the world so much that she couldn't help but smile. He found out that it was a little bit of both. He watched her carefully after that night, measuring each of her actions and reactions. He found that she was not the kind to dwell on any kind of negativity. She strongly preferred not to deal with it all, and when confronted with it, her smile stretched so wide it almost hurt to look at. But that gleam in her eyes could not be faked. There were moments when she thought no one was looking, and she looked over at Naruto, or himself, or Sasuke, or even now Zabuza and Haku, that her eyes lit up. There was a kind of fierce, burning, bright pure love and affection in them that Kakashi certainly had no idea where it came from. The gaze was undeniable, though, that Sakura sincerely adored those around her with a ferocious fervor. And upon realizing that, it was hard not to notice all the little things she did for them. The jokes and smiles that even pulled out a reaction from the otherwise emotionless Sasuke, or the tight hugs she would give to Naruto any time he seemed less than happy, or how she was the only one who woke Kakashi up, getting pinned a few more times in the process, and treated it like it was the most natural thing in the world. Like he didn't have PTSD, and he never nearly killed her every morning. She let out a soft sigh in her sleep, and Kakashi twisted around and carefully took the cloth he lent her. He folded it neatly, and pulled out his water canteen before he wet out a little. He wiped away the dried blood around her face, then put the cloth away. With ease, he stood up and picked her up with him and began to carry her towards her sleeping bag. He didn't fully understand her, and he wondered if he ever would. He knew some things, though. And he knew the most important thing about her. She was the kind of girl that would love, and love, even as the whole world crumbled around her, with a smile that stretched so wide it hurt to look at. Ha ha. I made them live. Ha 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 ha. Plot. I do what I want. Blast some Vocaloid music while cartwheeling. There is no way in hell that Zabuza and Kakashi do not have extensive anatomy knowledge. Trained assassins gotta know where to hit to make it hurt, and after the trauma Kakashi experienced, I refuse to believe that he chose to not to learn any life-saving emergency first aid. Nah, no way. Answer. I dance to everything but redneck country. Ever since I was little, when I hear 1,000 miles I friggin' lose it in the car. Like the biggest dork ever. Question. Who would you like to have as your private tutor? Semicolon closing parenthesis. Reviews or love. Side note on Sakura's utility. Sakura will always be Panuel. I didn't write her more openly in her first story because I myself didn't feel ready to admit my own utility to my mom, so I skirted the edges for quite a while. But, yes, this Sakura does not give two shits about gender. It's all about what's underneath for her, and asses, of course. This does mean that there will be females in the harem. There are, however, more men than women in the Narutoverse, so the harem will still be predominantly male. My fingers trailed down the delicate stitches on Haku's chest. Haku was sitting up in his bed, an exorbitant amount of pillows behind and around him, as well as many flowers, fruit baskets, and little knickknacks. Naruto had advertised to the people of Wave that it was Zabuza who had personally slain the evil tyrant, which earned the missing nin a big shiny pedestal to stand on above them. Not even a day later did they find out about his precious student, and in hopes of showing gratitude, the people showed up with many gifts for the duo. It was left unsaid that not even a week ago Zabuza and Haku had been out for Tazuna's head. It looks like we're out of the woods, I finally said. Haku smiled warmly at me, and Zabuza let out a small gruffing noise to my right. The missing nin had played nursemaid to his student the past couple of days, allowing me to nurse his own wounds in the process, as well. He, too, sat in a bed with many fluffy pillows propped around him. No infection, and no signs of rejection. You'll have to be careful for a while longer, but I feel pretty confident that in a couple days I'll be able to heal the wound shut and we can take out the stitches. Thank you, Sakura-sensei, Haku politely said, a serene smile still on his face. I owe you. I shushed him by smooshing his cheeks together so his lips puckered out. I know. No need to say it anymore, Haku. You know exactly how to thank me, if you choose to. Haku nodded his head, and I removed my hands. Yes, I have thought it over, and I am very honored to be invited into your harem. I will gladly accept. I squealed. Fantastic. How about you, Zabuza? I'm not joining some goddamn harem. So that's a yes. Zabuza gave me a withering glare. You're going to act as though I'm part of your harem, regardless of what I actually say, aren't you? Yes. Zabuza let out a long sigh. I don't care anymore. We're even by this, you annoying Dr. Brat. I squealed in delight again, moving over and throwing my arms around his neck. Get off, you stupid. Shut up and accept my love and affection, I ordered him as I started to nuzzle. I love you guys. Die in a fire, Zabuza grouched, glaring balefully at the giggling Haku. He unhooked my arms around his neck and promptly shoved me away from him. I landed on my bum, still beside myself with happiness that I had successfully coerced two awesome people into my personal harem. I stood back up, beaming at both of my patients. I'll let you two get some more rest. If you need me, I'll be in town at the clinic. Of course, Sakura-sensei, Haku murmured. Have a pleasant day. You, too, cutie. Since the 2 days of Gato's demise, the town had transformed. Everyone rallied together to finish the bridge. Unfortunately, Kakashi and Zabuza's battle had caused some structural damage to the bridge, which pushed its completion date back another week, despite having numerous workers helping out. All of Gato's previous thugs were rounded up by the villagers, and Naruto and Sasuke, each thrown into the makeshift prison, to be awaiting whatever justice the village decided to award them. Gato's mansion was ransacked and the money was distributed fairly evenly. A large sum of it went to Zabuza and Haku as thanks for killing him, and another large portion actually came to us. Tazuna insisted paying us for doing a proper job. With the monopoly on wave effectively destroyed, a few villagers sent out invitations to merchants to come to wave in hopes of re-establishing a healthy economy. The village itself had an optimistic and cheerful atmosphere, with everyone frantically trying to repair what they could in hopes of enticing more merchants and other necessities. I was given Kakashi's permission to resume my post as their doctor, and much to my surprise and utter joy, he actually had Pakun sit with me. It would turn out that Pakun had learned anatomy with Kakashi, and was damn good at sniffing out infections. Not to mention I sincerely felt better having someone else supervise my work. Especially someone so unbelievably adorable and who would reward me for doing a good job by letting me squeeze his paws. Naruto and Sasuke still alternated guarding Tazuna. I wasn't sure what Sasuke did when he wasn't on guard duty, but I knew that Naruto helped around the village however he could when he wasn't on guard duty. Kakashi was another mystery. I would wake him each morning, examine him, and after giving my okay, I knew very well that he was only humoring me, and we both knew that he didn't need my permission to do anything. He left. Where to? I hadn't a clue, but Pakun was able to alert him if there was any kind of emergency, so I wasn't concerned too much about it. The clinic had been one of the first things the villagers had fixed up for me, and I had many wonderful people offer me their assistance whenever I needed it. One of the women actually made me another doctor's coat since my previous one had been ruined by the failed attempt to save those 2 men. I had my hair pushed back with my Hitai-8 in order to keep the bangs out of my face. My hands worked quickly as I sutured a boy no older than myself. He had slipped on the rocks by the dock and split open his calf. It was deep enough to require stitches, but it didn't sever anything too important, or cause enough damage to warrant using my shozen. Instead, I numbed the area and began my stitches. The boy watched me work with transfixed eyes, his friends flanking either side of him. You're gonna have to tell your Ka-chan, I told him, neatly pressing the flabs of skin together while I worked. His face screwed up in obvious distaste, while the other boys snickered at him. Can't you make it like it never happened, sensei? It's healthier to allow your body to regrow at its natural rate, I told him. The wound isn't severe enough to warrant any more chakra aside from numbing. It won't even scar. He whined. What? That's so lame. All this, and not only am I going to be killed by Ka-san, but I'm not even going to get a scar out of it. If you want a scar so bad, just play with fire, I told him. Pakun wheezed out a laugh. What kind of doctor tells her patient to play with fire? Only the best kind, of course, I told him flippantly. There we go. Let me write you up a note so your Ka-chan knows how to take care of you. One of his friends sniggered. Yeah, wouldn't want him to get too much worse after she blisters his butt. That got a groan from my patient, and a snicker from the other friend. I reached over, pausing in my rapid writing, and sympathetically patted my patient. After your spanking, be sure to ice your bum. Hi, sensei, the trio chorused. On your way out, please send in my next patient. They all gave varying degrees of affirmation as they left. I popped my knuckles and stretched out in my creaky chair. The clinic was small, and I was only using one tiny room to take care of patients. It smelled musty, was almost entirely made of wood, and the floorboards were heavily stained. I loved it. As the next patient entered the room, I reached over and picked up Pakun and began to nuzzle the top of his head. Cutest puppy ever. Pakun accepted my love like the cute badass he was. Good afternoon, sensei, greeted a beautiful young woman. She brushed back her long green hair and sat down on the bed. Happy Catterday, Nei-san, I returned, smiling brightly at her. How can I help such a pretty lady today? She blushed. I'm late. Oh, I wittily responded, reaching over and placing a hand over her lower abdomen. A heartbeat passed and I pulled back. Congratulations, Nei-san. Her eyes lit up and she let out a quiet gasp. So I nodded my head. You have a second chakra network developing inside of you. Let me consult my book and I can give you a due date, if you'd like. She nodded her head enthusiastically. This is so wonderful. Yuri-chan will be so happy. Congratulations again, I repeated, standing up and putting Pakun in my seat. I headed over to my backpack and rummaged through to try and find my book on the reproductive system. Ah, there it is. That was how my days went by for the remainder of our time in Wave. I would make my rounds on our team, including Zabuza and Haku, then I would spend the rest of my time at the clinic tending to whoever needed care. There were a couple more cases that required more expert hands than my own, but for the most part one was able to work independently with Pakun supervising. The day we were about to leave was the day that Haku was able to leave his bed. All of us had gathered at the end of the bridge with quite the send-off. Some of the younger children had woven a beautiful flower crown for me after I fixed their Ka-chan and Tu-chan boo-boos. On the day of our departure, they had woven a fresh one for me that I wore proudly. It seemed like the entire village had gathered to send us off, with Zabuza and Haku right at the front. Haku was leaning on a single crutch. He was on severely strict orders to rest as much as possible. I would have put him in a wheelchair if I could. Kakashi stood the furthest away from our group, his hands in his pocket. Naruto and I easily and happily lapped up the attention, while Sasuke seemed more inclined to inching further and further away from the crowd of people. We owe a lot to you, Tazuna said loudly, instilling a hush over the crowd. Not only did you protect and help make this bridge, but through your efforts this village's greatest and longest nightmare is finally over. This caused a round of cheering and thunderous stomping behind him. Tazuna lifted his hand for silence again, smiling widely. You helped us, healed our sick, and took care of us. Without you, none of this would be possible. Without you, we wouldn't have hope. Thank you, Shinobi of Konoha. In a gesture of our appreciation, we decided to name the bridge Seven's Hope, so we may never forget the hope Team 7 has brought us. The crowd roared its approval. I took Naruto's hand and in perfect sync the two of us bowed to the crowd. Thank you very much. Ma, Kakashi said, placing a hand on the top of each of our heads. We should be heading out. I want to reach Konoha before it gets dark. Woohoo! Wait until Gigi hears about this, Naruto boasted, hopping from one foot to the other in excitement. I winked at Haku and Zabuza. Don't miss me too much, you hot people, you. Haku laughed quietly, while Zabuza sneered at me. Haku hobbled towards us, an incredibly attractive smile on his face. Thank you all for what you have done. I'm certain we will meet again one day, and I look forward to that day. Oh, stop it, I said, lightly hitting his shoulder. You're gonna make me blush with that kind of talk. A spark of amusement entered his eyes, and faster than what I could process, he placed a warm kiss on my cheek. Naruto let out a gasp of sheer horror, while I got many catcalls from the crowd. A blush rose up to my cheeks. You can do that again. Haku laughed. I wouldn't want to keep you. Have a safe trip, Sakura-chan. I sighed. Just got my harem started up and I already have to abandon members for a while. Kakashi-sensei, I need a comfort hug. You already had your hug for the day, Kakashi said patiently. You'll have to wait until tomorrow. I whined. Sasuke sighed. Can we leave now? And we're back, I said as we entered the gates of Konoha. My hand moved on its own and grabbed Kakashi's. It's dark and scary at night. Walk me home, please. Nope, Kakashi said cheerfully, yanking his hand out of my own like it was on fire. Report to the Hokage's tower at 0600 tomorrow to give your reports. Later, minions. I'll walk you home, Naruto offered happily after Kakashi disappeared in a puff of smoke. I beamed. Excellent. I held out my arm. This will give you good practice for when you're dating your future wife. Naruto hooked his arm through mine. Who's that? I patted his arm. The same girl who currently has a crush on you. Naruto gasped. Someone has a crush on me. Yes. And if you prove that you're mature enough to be a good boyfriend, I'll tell you who. This girl has had a crush on you since the first year of the academy. She believes you'll make the best Hokage, ever, even. She sounds perfect, Naruto whispered in awe. She is, I agreed. Now walk me home like the gentleman I know you are deep down inside. Yes, ma'am. I entered the kitchen around 5 the next morning, greeted by the smell of pork and eggs. Sakura's mother, Ka-chan was making an omelet. She beamed when she saw me enter. Good morning, Sa-chan. I have big breakfast ready for you. Extra meat? I asked hopefully. Extra pork, Ka-chan promised. It was a little weird associating the word mother with a woman I didn't really know. I had maybe a quarter of Sakura's memories, and I was still relatively detached from them. Mother was distant, and viewed me more as a pet for her project, rather than an actual daughter. Not that I was complaining, of course. I had shelter, food, and she was a firm believer in buying people's affection, so I had an impressive collection of materialistic items. Father went AWOL from his center, and I hadn't seen him in over a decade. Sakura's Ka-chan, though, was very warm and prone to physical affection. So was her 2-chan, and pretty much her entire family. They were prone to using their fists, too, when angered, but never out of malice. I sat down at the worn wooden table, and Ka-chan placed a bowl of steaming eggs, pork, cheese, and veggies in front of me. She then poured me a glass of fresh aid, because the woman was a dedicated gardener and nurtured 2 cherry blossom trees, and 3 trees before she sat down beside me, a happy smile on her face. Tell me more about your mission. In between wolfing down the delicious food and chugging the aid, I told her everything that happened on the mission. I left out the part where I failed to save the men with gangrene because that shit was depressing, and no one wanted to hear about depressing shit unless they were in an angsty mood, which we certainly were not. She oohed and awed and squealed happily at all the right parts. Since I had come home so late last night, she and Tu-chan didn't push for more than brief assurances that I was okay and everything went okay. How exciting, Ka-chan sighed. What a romantic life you led. Are you happy, little flower? Of course I am, I told her. Are you? I'm very happy for you. Ah, let's not tell Tu-chan about Haku, though, nay. That made me snigger. A companionable silence filled the homey kitchen while I continued to eat and Ka-chan pulled out her crochet supplies. When I was finished eating, she asked, would you like more? I'm full enough, I reassured her. After the debriefing, I'm going to try and train with Hina-chan today. Training ground 5, right. Right. She smiled brightly. Okay. Be sure to tell her, and your teammates, they're welcome to come over for lunch or dinner. I will, I promised. After a brief hesitation, I bent down and kissed her forehead. Bye-bye. Have fun, Sa-chan. Team 7 gathered at the entrance to the Hokage's tower at exactly 600. Kakashi appeared in a whirl of leaves right on the dot, his favorite book nowhere in sight. With an excited giggle, I threw myself at my favorite sensei, using up my allotted physical contact of the day for a tight hug. When I began to nuzzle into him, Kakashi decided I had had my fun and began the process of prying me off him. I allowed him to do so, letting out a reluctant sigh. One day you will crave my hugs. Mark my words. I very much doubt that, Kakashi responded dubiously. Okay, team, let's head inside. Have you all finished writing your reports? I even drew pictures, Naruto exclaimed, holding out his crumpled papers. A quick glance from them made me whistle of appreciation. The prankster was a better artist than me. I'm sure Hokage-sama will be happy to look at your pictures, Kakashi responded, and I couldn't tell if he was being sarcastic, or sincerely believed that the Hokage's notorious soft spot for Naruto would cause him to enjoy the pictures. What are we doing after we give the report? Sasuke asked as Kakashi began to herd us inside. I purposely stopped short right before him in hopes he would bump into me, but the ex-Anbu saw that coming and was prodding my back with the blunt end of a kunai. I pouted at him. Kakashi pushed the kunai further in, forcing me to keep up with his pace, and stay a good arm's length in front of him. I'm not sure. Protocol would dictate that any time a mission escalates a rank, the team is required to take a 3-day resting period, minimum. Given that none of us were seriously injured, and had time to rest up the following week, it may be possible the Hokage will waive the rule for us. If he does waive it, what will we do? I asked, smiling brightly. Can we train together more? I wanna learn a ninjutsu. Genjutsu would be okay, too, I guess. Oh, and I wanna learn kenjutsu, and. We'll see, Kakashi interrupted. Ah, Sakura-chan, you know how to act in front of the Hokage, right? I morphed my face into an innocent expression. Whatever do you mean, Kakashi-sensei? I would treat Hokage-sama like all my superiors. Quote. You understand that I am technically your superior, right? Kakashi asked slowly. I purred. You can be whatever you wanna be, baby. Okay. Kakashi said loudly. Sakura-chan, no talking, please. Naruto sniggered at my betrayed look, while Sasuke turned his head to hide his smirk. We had reached the Hokage's office. I remained quiet as my teammates gave detailed reports of the mission. Naruto even turned to specific pictures in his report to show the Hokage. Hiruzen interrupted a few times to ask some pointed questions, and when it was first mentioned that Kakashi allowed us to carry on with an A- rank mission, Hiruzen gave a very pointed look towards the ex-Anbu captain. If I didn't know any better, I would have thought that the grandfather had even leaked some killing intent towards Kakashi, but that couldn't be the case, could it? And what is your take on the mission, Sakura-san? Hiruzen inquired. You have been largely silent. I felt my teammates stiffen around me, and I smiled widely. Pretty great. I got my harem started up. Amusement entered the Hokage's eyes, as I felt Sasuke sigh and Naruto try to cover his laughter. Did you now? Yes, I confirmed happily. I have every intention of being the next mega super pervert, you know. You know, I trained the original mega super pervert, Hiruzen told me, seeming to find my excitement humorous. Oh, I know, I assured him. Jiraiya-sama is amazing. I wish I could read his works, but apparently, I turned and shot a glare at Kakashi. I'm too young and someone won't buy them for me. The dilemma of age, Hiruzen uttered. Truly, what a shame. I'm surprised no one has told you, though, that those of Chunin rank and above are considered legal adults in Konoha's eyes, and as such you would legally be allowed to purchase those books once you become a Chunin. I gasped in the same moment Sasuke moaned. Naruto couldn't hide his laughter anymore, and Kakashi whispered despairingly, why would you tell her that? I am so going to become a Chunin, I declared, my next goal set before me. And then I shall have an Ika Ika fest, and use all the pickup lines learned from it on Kakashi-sensei. Kakashi buried his face in his hands. Hiruzen chuckled. I'm quite glad to hear that, and I look forward to watching you succeed. Succeed in becoming a Chunin. That, too, Hiruzen agreed. I felt Kakashi twitch behind me and the veteran cleared his throat. Do you have any further questions for us, Hokage-sama? So will Kakashi be part of your har. Relevant, Kakashi pleaded. Any relevant questions, Hokage-sama, please. I leaned forward and whispered to Hiruzen, I think we're making the poor dear uncomfortable. It would appear so, Hiruzen murmured, sighing. I have no further, Hiruzen sniffed, relevant questions for your team. Take the standard 3 days off, collect your mission pay, and report back here for your next mission. We saluted. Dismissed. Except for Kakashi. Naruto-kun, Sasuke-san, and Sakura-kun, have a pleasant day. The three of us shuffled out of the office, and it clicked shut behind us. Now what? Naruto asked. I'm going to wait for Kakashi-sensei, I decided. I have a few hours before I have to meet up with Hina-chan to train, anyway. I'm going to train, Sasuke said slowly. Then I guess. Hey, I interrupted, you two should train together. And learn, like, water walking. What? Naruto asked. Water walking. You know how Zabuza was able to stand on the water. And remember the tree exercise. Water walking is doing the tree exercise, except on water. It's the next level to chakra control. And you two seem to do better when you're competing with one another. So, I say you two should go down to our training grounds and go practice water walking. The two boys exchanged glances, both looking reluctant. I'll bring you guys homemade lunch before I train with Hina-chan, I bribed. Okay. Naruto decided, nodding his head. I guess I can work with the bastard long enough for lunch. Sasuke shrugged. I suppose ravioli is acceptable for lunch if I have to train with this idiot. Consider it done, I promised. The two boys looked at each other once more, before they began to head off. Not even a minute into their travel, and I could already hear them bicker. The familiar noise made me feel a bit nostalgic. I sat down on the rough carpet, leaning against the closed door. I shifted so my backpack was in my lap, and I opened it to pull out my next sewing project. A solid half an hour passed by in relative silence before the door opened behind me and I fell into the office and onto Kakashi's feet. Kakashi looked down at me, and I smiled up at him. Hello. Kakashi rubbed at the back of his head. Did you wait for me? Of course I did, I told him, surprised he seemed sincerely stunned. I love you. Why wouldn't I wait for you? The fact that I waited for him must have really thrown him for a loop, because Kakashi's visible eye widened marginally and he stiffened considerably. Right. Then, make sure you, train, and we'll, meet up again after our, vacation is over. Bye. Then he was gone, and I heard Hirazen's wheezing laughter from the office. Still laying on the floor, I raised my hands in a greeting to our Hokage and waved them around excitedly. Hi, Hokage-sama. Hello, Sakura-chan, Hirazen chuckled. Hinata's eyes were wide with astonishment and a little bit of awe. That sounds so amazing, Sakura-chan. RC rank wasn't anywhere near as daring. I beamed at my dear friend. It was definitely fun. How have you been, though? Done any more training? Hinata nodded her head hesitantly. I've been practicing releasing tenketsu blocks like you said. I'm not very good. I smooshed her cheeks together so she couldn't finish what she was saying. You are a brilliant kunoichi. Say it with me. I am a brilliant kunoichi. I am Abi Wiwian, ku kunovichi. With a smile, I released her. Good. Keep practicing until you can release the blocks without using your hands. Trust me, you're gonna need this skill for later. Okay. Hinata murmured agreeably. You Sakura-chan. Yes, dear, my, two-sama are requested to meet with you. I'm my head. Okay. When does he want to meet? He didn't specify. Okay. We'll end training a bit earlier today and then I'll go meet him, I decided. With that settled, let's get started. I wanna be hella strong for the upcoming exams. Hinata giggled while I began to flex my biceps. Look at these guns. Show me your guns, Hina-chan. Still giggling, she held out her arm for me to squeeze her biceps. She was already a fairly fit girl at the start of training, but under Aruka's advised regime there was a noticeable difference. She was leaner and more toned, not to mention her hands were thoroughly calloused, enough so that she didn't have to typically wear gauze after our sessions anymore. The difference for me at the start of training was astronomical. Sakura had been starving her body of necessary nutrients in her misguided attempts to look pretty, and she did not work out in the slightest outside of the required academy hours. The drastic change in routine did wonders for the growing body. I had proper fat and muscles now. I felt immensely proud of myself for the transformation. Hinata and I had reached a milestone in our physical development and it warranted a little self-praise and ego grooming. It also signified that we would be able to take our training to the next level. Tomorrow, I told her, still poking at her arms, it seemed she was a little ticklish and her giggles were so contagious and delightful. I couldn't resist. We shall pick out training weights since we're now properly strong enough that we won't damage our muscles by using them. I stopped tickling the princess long enough for to catch her breath. She was wheezing, curled up in the fetal position with a happy smile on her face. Okay. With energy that would put an Uzumaki to shame, I leapt up and clapped my hands together. Alright, let's do some hardcore sparring now. Hinata rolled onto her back, a gleam in her eyes. I promise not to block your tenketsus. I bowed, offering my hand out to her. I thank you for your kindness, milady. With mock grace she took my hand and stood back up, brushing off the dirt on her clothes and readjusting them. On the count of 3. I beamed. 1, 2, 3. We leapt at each other, determined smiles on our faces. Owie, 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 I whined as Hinata slowly stitched my left arm closed. Hinata's chakra control was superb enough that she could learn the Shozen and become an Iryo Nin, but she chose not to because she honestly wanted to become an accomplished frontline fighter and focus on her clan techniques. I personally thought she would have made a rockin' Iryo Nin, and we could have been the duo Y doctor, nurse, which would have been awesome, but I wasn't going to pressure her into changing her mind. She got enough discouragement everywhere else, I would never add on to that. That being said, I did insist that she had some basic first aid training, including emergency sutures and amputations. During our spar we had both nicked the other plenty with our kunai. While I could heal up our injuries no problem with Shozen, I chose not to in order to give Hinata hands-on experience with stitching. I didn't want to numb the area either, so I could immediately tell her if she was doing something incorrectly, or if she accidentally punctured something that should have been left alone. Sorry, Hinata apologized. Don't be sorry, I told her. I'm just being a crabby patient. You really got me good. Sorry, Hinata apologized again. With one hand I smooshed her cheeks together, causing her to pause in her work. Never apologize for being good at something, silly. I'm proud of you for what you did here today. I felt her face warm underneath my hand, and when I withdrew it I saw a pleasant flush on her cheeks. I smiled warmly at her, and she returned it with one of her own. Comfortable silence fell between us as she worked on stitching me up, then dressing my wounds. I had a fair amount of gauze covering my body at that point. My entire upper right arm, my entire left arm, my right calf, stomach, both feet, and hands, and even some wrapped around my head. My black training capri pants were torn at the edges, and I had a gash through my midsection, tearing open my red cami. Hinata was equally as battered and covered in gauze as I was. When we were both all doctored up, the sun had just started its descent over the horizon. I stood up, wincing at the sensation and said, "All right, let's go meet with your 2-chan." Hinata looked up and down at me, an eyebrow raised. Either we meet him like this, or I go to him in a bathrobe first thing tomorrow morning. She covered her mouth in a useless attempt to hide her smile. Suppose then that it would be, best to meet with him now. I offered her my arm, and she took it daintily. Right you are, milady. Right you are. Gingerly, I took a seat across from Hiyashi. I winced as I felt the stitches stretch across my arm and abdomen. Hiyashi watched me with a focused gaze, his face a perfect mask of apathy. Hinata fidgeted beside me, her gaze steadily looking down. My eyes roamed across the pristine office, taking in how everything was meticulously organized, and if I didn't know any better, I would say that no one had used it for years. It looked detached, and entirely without life. Reminds me of home, I briefly thought. I'm thirsty. Hinata's back stiffened. I can go get. Please provide our guest with some refreshments, Hinata, Hiyashi said softly. Hinata nodded jerkily before she left quickly. As soon as she left, I glared at Hiyashi. You oughta be ashamed of yourself. Excuse me. Hiyashi's eyes narrowed. What kind of father psychologically harasses and hurts his own daughter? I demanded. No wonder people think the Hyuga have stick up their asses and think they're the next Ing Uchiha. Their own clan head treats his own daughter like a piece of shit. Hiyashi's cheeks flushed in anger and he hissed, "You have no." I leaned forward and put both my hands on his desk, entirely nonplussed. I don't care if you're socially awkward with children, or if your own father treated you like this. You're smart enough to know that your disinterest, disapproval and all-around jackassery is debilitating to Hina-chan. Yet you still do it anyway. You have no right, Hiyashi thundered, a vicious glower on his face. Killing intent poured from him, but it didn't even faze me. I have every right, I snarled back. I see firsthand the kind of damage you caused her. She's not some toy for you to toss aside because she doesn't meet your pathetic standards. Humans are not things that conform to ideals. Each human is different. You can't expect Hina-chan to learn and grow in the same kind of way you and your brother did, can you? No, you absolutely cannot. This whole village formed with the idea of providing children the ability to grow in a nurturing and safe environment. Yet you spit on that ideal every time you treat your own daughter like garbage because of some arbitrary and stupid ideals that are hella outdated. If you keep up with your child abuse, you're going to lose her. You're going to lose Hina-chan in a way that you will never get her back. So you better get your shit straight, and start acting like the proper 2-chan that she deserves, or you'll find yourself dealing with me again. And I promise your underwear will never feel safe again, I snarled. I will devote every waking moment of my life to making your life as miserable as you have made hers. I swear. Hiyashi's body trembled with restrained anger, and the venom in his following words was impressive. Get out. Gladly. I snapped. I stood up, threw open the door, and found myself face to face none other than a gobsmacked Team 10, along with an extremely uncomfortable looking guy. I nodded to them, then brushed past them into a positively petrified Hinata. I smiled at her and blew her a kiss. Take care, dearie. I'll be by tomorrow to pick you up for training. B, Hinata squeaked. With a spring in my step, I left the Hyuga compound. I'm in the mood for some ice cream. Ooh, yes. I'm here to pick Hina-chan up for training, I chirped to the Hyuga guards. They both exchanged glances before one of them left. 3 minutes passed by for Hiyashi appeared at the front gate, his gaze hard. Haruno. Hina-chan's 2-chan, I greeted coolly. Hiyashi eyed me for several moments before he tilted his head, beckoning me to follow him. Cautiously, I did so. He took me through the compound to a small, well-hidden garden in a courtyard. There were trees, an abundance of flowers and rows of vegetables, each lovingly labeled. Hiyashi took a seat on the porch, gesturing for me to sit beside him. Dubiously, I did so. Since you chose to speak so plainly last night, I will grant you the same favor. I am torn between demanding compensation for your lack of civility, and desiring to keep my original purpose of wanting to meet with you. Hiyashi paused. I love my children. Do not ever claim otherwise. I resisted the urge to snort at that. However, Hiyashi continued, a strained look briefly crossing over his face. I understand how someone on the outside would perceive it to be otherwise. Why? I asked. Why do you treat her like such if you actually love her? My late wife, Hasana, made this garden, Hiyashi said quietly. She passed away shortly after Hanabi was born. She was killed in action, she let her guard down, was tricked by the enemy. She was too gentle to be a kunoichi, and that kindness lead her to. So now you punish your daughter in hopes of, what? Hardening her. Hinata is too gentle to be a kunoichi. I do not want her to be a kunoichi at all. That's complete bullshit, I told him. Hinata's way stronger than you think her to be. She's kind, and despite putting up with you apparently passive-aggressively trying to destroy her dreams, she's still tried her hardest. She hasn't given up despite her own 2-chan treating her like garbage. She hasn't stopped loving you despite you being a complete jerk to her. That takes a special kind of strength to do that. A special kind of strength in order to forgive something like that. She's strong. Stronger than you and I could ever be. It would be best if she wasn't a kunoichi at all, Hiyashi said softly. It would be best if she was loved by her 2-chan regardless of her choices, I retorted. You tell this stuff to her. Treat her like Hasana would have treated her. She doesn't have a ka-chan anymore, and right now she doesn't have a proper 2-chan. He glanced at me. What would a proper 2-san do, then? Ask about her day, I said quietly. Attend one of our training sessions, and don't focus on her mistakes. Praise what she does right. I lifted up my shirt and presented him with my large gash. She did this to me. When she's not scared shitless, or feel like she's being poorly judged, she flourishes. She's damn good, Hiyashi-san. Show her that you know she's good. Hiyashi let out a long sigh. The reason I asked to meet with you in the first place is because of the change you brought to her. I never thought I would, Hiyashi caught himself. What you did was inappropriate, and incredibly rude. If you have an issue with me, it should be dealt with privately, not in public. I was about to retort, when he raised his hand. That being said, I do understand why you lost your temper. You clearly care a great deal for my daughter, and you are at an emotional age that without proper training you cannot be expected to be in full control of your actions. All you saw was your friend being mistreated, and you acted on the knowledge that you had. Frowning, I decided not to tell him that I had planned for my outburst for quite some time in hopes of therapy no jutsuing him. If I had kept it private, I felt like Hiyashi would not have taken my concerns as seriously as having an audience. I also wanted to hurt him, at least a little bit, as much as he hurted Hinata. Frankly, I still planned on some kind of vengeance on her behalf, but not for a while. It would be too obvious that I had done it if I acted so soon after my outburst. I get that I hesitated, traumatized from the loss of your wife, but Hina-chan isn't Hasana. She's your daughter, and she needs a 2-chan. Is it really so much to ask of you to be that for her? She's not going to give up on her dreams. You've clearly tried for years to convince her otherwise. You honestly think it'll change now? No, Hiyashi admitted softly. After seeing the changes brought to her by encouragement, I have been forced to reconsider many things. That being said, in regards to I'll apologize if you come to our training session today, I told him. See for yourself what being positive can do for her. Hiyashi's lips twitched. Very well. I paused. You should probably try to stay hidden at the start, though. If she knew you were watching, she'd probably get all nervous. That seems likely. I watched the shy Hinata smile at her father, and Hiyashi award her with the faintest smile of his own. The two were headed home after our training session, both looking a lot happier than I had ever seen them. Hiyashi was ready to beg for Neji's forgiveness around this point. He only needed a bit more of a push to change for the better for Hinata. And now that he'd seen her be strong, seen the potential inside of her, he'd never only see a weak little girl. At least, that was what I hoped. I had done my best to encourage the bright optimism and confidence I knew she had inside of her. I had done my best to fuel her dreams, and I had done my best to give her the strength she so desperately needed. Not only to prepare her for the horror that was the Chunin exams, or for the upcoming Akatsuki war, but because I sincerely believed she would be happier that way. She would be happiest with not only Naruto's acknowledgement, but her own family's, too. I may not have been fond of Hiyashi, but I understood her desire to be loved by her only living parent. And since that was what she wanted, I would do my best to provide it. Besides, who knows what kind of influence having a positive atmosphere at home and outside of home would do for her. I relished the feeling of blankets and warmth. The sun poured in through the window, and despite it being right in my eyes, I kept my blinds up and curtains pulled back. I simply did not want to get out of bed. Today I would go shopping with Hinata to pick out weights, and since Team 7 was still technically on leave, I had nowhere else to be aside from that. It was decided by myself that I would spend the day being utterly lazy and resting up. I am the blanket. The blanket is me. My stomach growled like the traitor it was. A moan escaped my lips. Then my bladder told me it was time to get up, too. Traitor. All of me. Get up. Lazy ass. With another groan, I rolled out of my body and flopped to the floor, taking the blankets with me. Still bundled up, I made my way to the bathroom, and then down into the kitchen. 2-chan looked up from his Sudoku, his eyes gleaming. Good morning, little flower. G-morning, I mumbled. Ka-chan entered the kitchen and kissed my cheek. Good morning, love. Let me whip you up some breakfast. Please and thank you. I sat beside 2-chan, stifling a yawn. 2-chan patted the top of my head. Another busy day of training. Probably, I admitted. Tomorrow I'm supposed to meet up with my team so we can take our next mission. 2-chan nodded at that, then his bright green eyes lit up. Oh, that reminds me. Your friend came by and wanted to give you this. I blinked as 2-chan hurried out of the kitchen before returning with a medium-sized box and a feminine note on top. He set both in my lap, and I carefully opened the note before reading it. Sakura-chan, 2-sama has decided to take an active role in my training once again. I know I have you to thank for that, and I cannot properly express my gratitude enough to convey how much it means to me. Thank you. I'm sorry, however, that it means that we will not be able to train together for a while. I know we were both excited to begin our weight training, and go shopping together, so I hope you don't mind that I took the liberty of purchasing our weights. Let's both become strong kunoichi. Sincerely yours, Hinata. I reread the overly formal note, wondering how embarrassed the cutie felt when writing that. The thought made my lips quirk upwards. I handed the note over to Ka-chan, as I could feel her trying to read it over my shoulder. She squealed happily when she finished reading it before handing it to Chan. I am surrounded by adorable people, I thought, resisting the urge to pinch both their cheeks. My gaze swung over to the white box, and I lifted the lid. My mouth dropped open. The weights were seal weights. The single most expensive kind of weights one could buy. Standard weights were bulky and pretty obvious to the fact that they were weights. Seal weights were intricately embedded into a durable cloth-like material and transformed into things like small wristbands or akin. There were 4 articles inside the box, each of them a deep red with a little pink flower in the center, 2 wristbands, and 2 for my ankles. Beside the articles were instructions, and a 5-year warranty, which would not have been cheap given our line of work. With careful hands, I pulled each one out and examined it. Holy smokes! What cute little wristbands, Ka-chan exclaimed. They are cute, I agreed, not correcting her that they were more than simple wristbands. Ka-chan, would you mind packing me a lunch, and some snacks, too? I think I'll be a bit late out tonight. Okay. Sa-chan. I meandered through the streets of Konoha, my arms and legs aching something fierce. The sun had long since set, and the roads had thinned out as the night wore on. I took my time making my way home. Sometimes I was so amazed by everything I saw, and everything I felt. It was miraculous, a dream come true, really, to have woken up in the Narutoverse, right at the heart of everything. I never thought such a thing could happen, and I found myself wondering exactly how it happened. I would have considered it all to be part of one of my episodes, but my episodes never lasted this long, and they were a lot more wild than the relatively tame Narutoverse. At least, I didn't see any oozing walls, mountain of corpses, or sneering faces. Konoha was exactly as warm and bright as I imagined it to be. People were generally friendly, and children ran about the streets entirely unsupervised. It was a very trusting environment, and I felt envious of all the children who were born and raised from the start there. The smell of fried food caught my attention, and I decided to indulge a little from a food stand before heading home. As I nibbled on the deliciousness, my legs and arms cursing at me for not immediately returning home to take a hot bath, I couldn't help but think, I wish these kinds of days wouldn't end. It was a shame, really. But the clock kept ticking, and the exams in Akatsuki drew nearer, with the war right at their heels. As unavoidable as death. That thought made me smile wryly. As unavoidable as death, huh? Why do we call wave, but the leaf is still written as Konoha in most fanfics? Hiyashi is an interesting fellow in the sense that Kishimoto made him one of the most contradicting characters in the manga. He starts off as a total hard ass and general bad father, but then after seeing one teeny tiny Naruto fight with Neji he suddenly transforms into someone who begs for forgiveness and becomes a good father. Either the guy was ready to be a good father all the way through and was keeping up one hell of a mask for God knows what reasons and just needed one little push to break that mask, or the guy is contradiction personified. For the sake of feel-good story, I chose the former. Next up, Chunin exams. I might make it like Rotted Rowan and try to squeeze it down into just one really long chapter, or 2 really long chapters. Speaking of which, gotta update RR again before I update this story. Answer. Kakuzu, OFC. He could teach me how to become rich, I bet. And money is the best superpower. Question. What kind of pet would you want? Reviews or love?